Welcome to LitLoom. Today we are not just reading chapter 1 of Kamala Markandaya's Nectar in a Sieve. We are dissecting it. We'll unpack every line, every image to understand how Markandaya builds a world of memory, loss, and resilience. This foundational analysis for understanding the entire novel will be explained in the next part of the video. Sometimes at night I think that my husband is with me again, coming gently through the mist, and we are tranquil together. Then morning comes, the wavering grey turns to gold, there is a stirring within as the sleepers awake, and he softly departs. Okay, let's take the first line first. Sometimes at night I think that my husband is with me again. Okay, so is with me again. Okay, the word husband represents that the bond that she talks about is a marital bond between a husband and a wife, and the word again highlights that they are no longer together, right? Temporarily, the husband comes and visits her, and this highlights about the separation and the departure, which it makes us curious what to know what is in the next line. Coming gently through the mist. Okay, now here the novel opens not with action but with a memory dream. The word mist symbolizes the obscurity of the past and the veil between life and death. And the word tranquil means happy, satisfied, acceptance, and also the peace. This word establishes the dominant emotional tone she associates with Nathan, that is peace and not passion. Then morning comes. The wavering grey turns to gold. The word grey, the color imagery grey, it highlights the obscurity, inconsistence, non-recognition, the gloominess, and the twilight, whereas the word gold highlights the brightness, clarity, isn't it? So the complete different imageries are brought out together. So the shift from grey to gold is a daily rebirth, but for her it means the loss of the dream, right? So for her perspective, it's something kind of sad because once the grey turns to gold, she have to be separated and come to the life where her husband is no longer with her, right? That is what Rukmani and the narrator highlights here. And his soft departure highlights his gentle nature. Even after the departure, the separation, she still appreciates, right? Don't use rough words to explain the bond with each other, right? Soft departure. This is about the gentle nature. The stirring within is literal, right? Others wake in, and metaphorically, the memory is receding, present reality is intruding. Okay, so when talking about the first paragraph, it highlights the close bond between Rukmani and Nathan, the husband and wife, or the narrator and her husband. And it's not just a bond, right? Not just a close bond. It's a spiritual, emotional bond which is strong, right? This is proved by the emotional visits that she mentioned about of her husband. Even though it's her own imagination, it's powerful enough for a reader to understand the nature of their relationship. Second paragraph. One by one they come out into the early morning sunshine, my son, my daughter, and Polly, the child I clung to who was not mine, and he no longer a child. Okay, let's analyze this first line. Okay, now this line itself introduces her makeshift family. Why I say that is, okay, let's explain it later on. Now this highlights that she comes to the real life, right, from the imagination. One by one they come out, the early morning sunshine. For her, the beauty of the day is not only with the sunshine but also with the children, the family that she lives with. Right, this highlights again about the emotional bond between the members who live together, the children, the mother. Even though Polly is not her own child, this line highlights the word, the phrase clung to suggest the deep need. Not mine, even though not mine, acknowledge a bond not of blood but of choice and trauma. This still highlights the characters, right? Okay, then let's move to the next line. Puli is with me because I tempted him. Tempted means urged, lured him. Out of my desperation, I lured him away from his soil to mine. The word tempted and lured are charged with guilt. The contrast, his soil to mine, it means she has convinced Polly to come from the area where he lives to the area where she lives right now. So the contrast, his soil to mine, is central. It's about city versus village. It's also about poverty versus stability, the hope for stability. Okay, so we can see the foreshadowing of themes of displacement as well right here. And yes, let's move on. Yet I have no fears now. What is done is done. There can be no repining. Repining means there can be no grief, no mourn, no miserable thing for what has happened. Okay? The word repining means fretful longing. This is a key philosophical stance of old Rukmani. It's about acceptance, right? The acceptance of what is there in the life. Okay, acceptance of fate, you could take it in that way as well, right? She rejects the futile regret, a lesson learned from a life of hardship. That is the core idea brought out in this whole line. Okay, are you happy with me? I said to him yesterday, being sure of the answer. He nodded, not hesitating, but a little impatient. Okay, let's move on. An old woman's foibles. A need for comfort. Right. Here, this part shows her self awareness and vulnerability. She knows about her true condition, right? Her need for verbal reassurance is what is meant by the word foible here, right? So that is something about contentment, right? In order to remove her guilt, this is the verbal reassurance, but it underscores her lifelong search for emotional security as well. Paragraph 3. This contains symbols of healing and colonial legacy. Let's dive into that as well. But I am comforted, I am satisfied most when I look at his hands. Okay, he has no fingers, only stubs. Since what has been taken away can be never given back, but they are clean and sound. Now here, since what has taken away cannot be given back, she talks about the fingers, right? Okay. Now this part contains a shocking visceral image. You can visualize police hands. The hand symbolizes the brutality of police past life, likely leprosy, right? Because she says there are no fingers. And also, their cleanliness of the hand of Puli now represents healing, care, and redemption. Okay, so let's move on. Where the sores were, there is now pink puckered flesh. Pink wrinkled flesh, right? The color imagery has been used. You can visualize. His limbs are untouched. Okay. Kenny and Selvam, between them, have kept my promise to him. Okay, now here the narrator introduces Dr. Kenny, who is also symbolizes colonial representation, the Western medicine, compassion, Western people, and Selvam, her progressive son. The promise is a vow of care, showing Rukmani's moral core. Okay, so that's all about the paragraph number 3. In the distance, when it is a fine day and my sight is not too dim, I can see the building where my son works. Okay, now here she talks about a building which is a dispensary where Dr. Kenny and Selvam works. He and Kenny, the young and the old. So this is about aging, the contrast. A large building, spruce and white. Not only money has built it, but men's hopes and pity. As I know who have seen it grow brick by brick and year by year. Okay, the repetition has an effect, a long lasting effect, which is the life and the time. Okay, now here the hospital is a physical and a symbolic landmark because it says that it's not the government who builds the hospital, the building, but the Western representation in the novel Dr. Kenny, and also her son also helped him. Okay, with effort, right? Not with money. Okay, however, the spruce and white again it contrasts with her mud hut, the mud huts in the village, the place where she lives. We still don't know where she lives, right? Representing modernity, colonialism, and charity. Built by pity. Okay, so she used the word pity, which is a complex symbol of both alien and benevolent Western influence, right? Both of these are included. That's why I said it's a complex symbol, right? Now, the usage of the words are really effective in this novel. Okay, with this, we comes to the end of her present life. From here onwards, Rukmani begins a flashback, right? So I will tell you that till here this part, the whole part that we have already read and explained, connects with the last page or the last part of the last chapter, right? So this becomes a cyclic process, right? This connect with the last page. That's how it goes. And from next paragraph onward, we are going to her flashback about her childhood. Okay, paragraph number 5. My three sisters were married long before I was. So that was about marriage. Let's see how the theme of marriage is developed. Shanta first, a big wedding which lasted for many days, plenty of gifts and feast, diamond earrings, a gold necklace as befitted. Befitted means suitable. The daughter for the daughter of the village headman. Okay, now here, this is where the story begins. And you can see the flashback, first person narration, I, my, okay. And this happened to be like the introductory paragraph, right? Because the previous part was about her real life, the current life, and this is about the story. Now here she begins to tell the story for the readership. Okay, and here this establishes her father's former status, right? He was a headman. And the lavish dowries, the diamond earrings, the gold necklace are not just gifts, but economic transactions securing status. Or else, this is the dowry. Okay, now the dowry, the lavish dowry that her sister had given when she was married, symbolizes their social class, wealth, superiority, and their class, right? They were of a recognized class or in the society. Padmini next, and she too made a good match, was married fittingly, it means suitably, appropriately, taking jewels and dowry with her. But when it comes to Thangam, only relations from our own village, came to the wedding and not from the surrounding districts as they had done before. And the only jewel she had was a diamond nose screw. Alright, so this is about the gradual degradation of the position economically and also status, right? The diminishing scale of weddings is a direct graph of the family's depleting resources. The nose screw, which is a small ornament, here symbolizes their reduced circumstances. Okay, so this also highlights about Indian culture, marriage, dowry, the the culture, right? The touch of culture, the transition of feudalism to colonization, and how the headman became poor, right? He was of a wealthy family considerably compared to the other people, but still he also got into the lower class. I mean, like, he also had a situation where he had the need of money superbly, right? Because dowry happened to be choose where you married to. So this is really important. That's why I said this paragraph is really highlights the diminishing scale of weddings, and the it appears like a graph here. Okay, let's move to one of the most important paragraphs. Here you can also take this as a context. Let's see how we can analyze this next paragraph. What for you? My mother would say, taking my face in her hands. My last born, my baby. 4 dowries is too much for a man to bear. Okay, now here, uh, this part is really dramatic, right? And I would like to tell you, and as we are talking about a context here, I will revise the main information that you need to want, need to analyze, need to mention in your answers if you are writing this foreign context. So, as for the identification, it's enough to mention that this is a post-colonial novel, Nectar in a Sieve, which is of the 20th century, written by Indian novelist who was born in 1924 to and died on 2004, Kamala Markandaya. And the plot right here, this is a flashback of the protagonist, who is Rukmani, of her childhood and almost before she is being married, right? Married. And here we can see the tone of Rukmani's mother, which is a bit troubled tone. Okay. Because she says here, my mother would say, taking my face in her hands, you can visualize a mother and the child behavior right here. My last born, my baby. 4 dowries is too much for a man to bear. What does this highlights? Now this highlights the economic condition which has been declined right? The economic downfall, and how this is highlighted by the dowry system, which almost make the people suffer so much, right? Because I told you why it is a problem earlier. And see what she says in return. Now, here, this also highlights the theme of dowry and also the culture, right? As I told to you, the phrase, taking my face in her hands is about love, maternal love, relationship, marriage, also about child marriage here as the supportive themes. And my last born, my baby, her troubled tone also highlights the separation, the hope, and the fantasy together with social norms and conventions. Okay, right, let's move on. And let's see what Rukmani says. The small Rukmani says, I shall have a grand wedding, I would say, such that everybody will remember when all else is a dream forgotten. Okay, now here the narrator directly states the financial burden of daughters in a patriarchal system. Rukmani's fate is framed as an economic problem here. Okay, and also when talking about the reply of Rukmani, it's about the social class, the separation, marriage, right? And of course, it's about the childishness, right? She don't know nothing about this. And see, there's irony as well, because for the children, it has been given as a dream. For little Rukmani, marriage was a dream, right? Even though they suffer a lot from that, because they are children, right? They have to separate from their family in a very small age, right? Even though it is about difficult circumstances, sufferings, but it still has given to them as a fantasy, a nightmare, a hope that they dream of, right? So that is about irony, of course, right? And also, this is a flashback. The narrator, who is old by now, remembers how she replied to mother when her mother says, and her mother's gestures still in her mind, right? Visual imagery. Okay, let's move on. I had heard this phrase in a storyteller's tale. That's why I said, right? This part I said earlier connects with this part. For it's is not my father head of the village, right? Now see, Rukmani's childish naivety. Her boast is built on a fading social structure. Her use of storyteller's phrase here shows she weaves life through romantic narratives she must unlearn. Okay? I knew this pleased my mother, for she would at once laugh and lose her look of worry. Imagine. Once, when I repeated this, my eldest brother overheard me, and he said sharply, don't speak like a fool. Okay, now this phrase, don't speak like a fool, is about the ignorance, inexperience, immaturity, lack of social exposure, innocence, and also it's about expectations for a better future. Now, here, when she says, for is not my father the head of the village, it's about her dignity and love, pride, social class, the innocence that is buried in her mind. Okay, and the the headman is no longer of consequence. The headman no longer has the power. That's about the social class. There is the collector who comes to these villages once a year, and to him is the power, and to those he appoints, not to the headman. Now, these words, collector, are colonial words, so it suggests that this novel is of written about during this time period. Okay, now headman was appointed by the feudal system, and the collector is the economic exploitation of rurality, and also highlights the transformation of the economic condition in these villages of India with the colonization. And talking about that, this is headman itself is a symbol of feudal system, whereas the collector is symbol of exploitation of rural labor, the colonization, right? You can see simile here. Don't speak like a fool. It's about a simile, and added to that the mother's love, the fear for the child's future, loving responsible mother's character also brought down here, because she happened to be a typical conventional woman symbol in this novel, right? She represents a typical conventional woman. Okay, so this is about the special paragraph that you can and you could get for the exam, and I hope that you have enough facts to score a best mark out of here. And if you need to know anything else, please leave a comment. I will explain you everything um, later on. Right. Then let's move to the next paragraph. Okay, let's move on. In this paragraph as well, I will separately mention there's a special paragraph that you can have in your exam. Okay, let's see when it comes, right? So, this was the first time I had ever heard that my father was no consequence. So, that is about dissatisfaction, right? So as a child, innocent child feels like that. So why my father is like that? So it's a general question, right? It was her first time, so it's about disappointment. It was as if a prop on which I learned had been roughly kicked away, shocked away, and I felt frightened and refused to believe him. That's why I said she was confused and if he refused to believe and disappointed. Okay, here you can see a simile as well. It was as if, right? As if. And next one is actually, but of course he was right. Okay, that is about acceptance. And by the time I came to womanhood, that's about puberty, and even I had to acknowledge that his prestige, his importance was much diminished, much decreased. Okay, now here comes the most important part which I mentioned earlier. Let's mark it down as the important paragraph number 2. There you have it, the intricate tapestry of Chapter 1, Part 1. From the misty realms of memory to the solid yielding earth of the pumpkin patch. Markandaya installs every theme, symbol, and conflict that will define Rukmani's epic struggle. The title's metaphor is already at work. She is building a life trying to hold nectar in the sieve of circumstance. In our next part of this chapter, we will see the first grains begin to slip through. If you found this deep dive valuable, smash that like button. Subscribe to LitLoom and let me know in the comments which symbol you think is the most powerful in this foundational chapter.